So let's just look at this image first. This is from a website called All Sides, and it's an attempt to raise public awareness about media bias. So this is a US context. So you can see there is the spectrum of left, center, and then the right. So there's this sort of the far left or the more extreme left, sort of center left, and then center. So this is a list of all the different media outlets, let's call them, because it's a combination of newspapers, TV stations, I think radio is on there as well. And you can see, so basically there is a wide spectrum. So this is not, my whole channel, The Rightest Leftist. I'm not here to attack the left or the right today. I'm here to just show you the facts of what is actually happening in the real world. I don't want to focus too much on the US though, because this is an Australian channel. But as you can see here, you might spot some sources that you already use, and maybe it's just a good thing to first reflect on. Would you consider yourself on the left and right, and then do you primarily consume content from the left and the right? And if you don't consume any content from the opposite side, why might that be? The other part of this is the media ownership, and it's really easily highlighted through the company Disney, because first of all, everyone knows Disney. If you're a kid growing up in the 90s or the 2000s, the Disney Channel and Disney movies were everywhere. But Disney now owns 100% of a bunch of different companies. So you've got Lucasfilm, which is Star Wars, Marvel. They actually own ABC, which is ABC in America. So like the Oscars, Jimmy Kimmel, a whole bunch of those shows. Pixar, they own the Muppets too, and Winnie the Pooh. And also their biggest acquisition, which I believe is one of the latest ones, was Fox. So they own pretty much all of the Fox company, which is a whole backlog of movies and shows. One of the biggest ones being The Simpsons, but many other movies and shows. They're at 80% of ESPN and 67% of Hulu. This is the thing that that I'm going to refer to as market concentration. Now, I'm not an economist or a business person by any. I'm a business person, but not in the business world of like corporate economics and all of that. But basically, what it means is that fewer and fewer companies are owning more and more of everything. And I think that is, you can look at my previous videos and discussions, I think is one of the biggest problems when you don't have true independent media or multiple choices for, and this is not just media, but any kind of industry. That's when those smaller companies have much more power, can do things like, controlling the prices, they can control the government and things like that. And that's a real big issue in my point of view. Now we're going to look at one of the worst offenders in this area. My good friend Rupert Murdoch, who's nearly going to die. Well, he's old, but he is, look, no doubt, really, I want to be balanced. Really, really good businessman. Good as in the intention of a business to create an empire and make money. Done a great job in that. Not going to give a history lesson on him, but did inherit his father's company, so he doesn't get to escape the Nepo baby title. He didn't build it from scratch, but he took a relatively small business and made it worldwide. I think he's part of the problem. Look at all the different countries there. Now, if you're on a phone or something small, you may not be able to see it all. This was the best quality image I could get of this, and I've got many more that we're going to have a look at. He has interests all over the world, primarily through his company News Corp, and in Australia, it's really hard to see there too. But he owns like Fox. Has ownership in Foxtel, Fox Sports, Fox Studios, News Limited, which is I believe now named News Corp, and runs a bunch of newspapers and TV outlets in Australia, and HarperCollins Publishing as well. And you can see there billions and billions of dollars of net worth, and his companies are worth billions of dollars too. And so he undoubtedly owns a media empire. It now is more run through his sons, because Murdoch is, I believe, in his 90s or very late 80s. Here's sort of a bit of the structure. So you got News Corp, which owns a bunch of newspapers and shows, and then there's 21st Century Fox, which I believe they did sell in its entirety to Disney. I believe James Murdoch, which is one of Rupert Murdoch's sons, is still on the board of on that company, and Lachlan Murdoch is largely taking over the reins from Rupert, but still hugely relevant company. So this is News Corp I believe, you can see the breakdown of their company ownership. So they own the REA Group, which in Australia would be things like, realestate.com. I think those might be they might be more US or UK based ones that are listed down there. Dow Jones, so they're in the Wall Street Journal, Market Watch, and a few other sort of investment based companies. Foxtel, which in Australia is huge. It was before streaming and all that came along in the NBN, which I'm going to talk about in future videos, why the NBN was so delayed. Murdoch didn't like that. Didn't like the NBN. Foxtel was like the pay TV subscription model in Australia for many years. And then, so if we look at News Corp Australia, they own papers like The Australian, Herald Sun, Daily Telegraph, news.com.au, which, sounds neutral, but if Rupert Murdoch is the owner of it and can kill stories or have things in a certain way, certain bias, a neutral sounding website like that presents a bit of an issue, I would say. And Sky News as well. And again, yes, HarperCollins, book publishers as well. Now, this is where I'm probably going to divert from my right-wing friends, is that I understand people will say, it's a business, he's a businessman, that's what businesses do, this is just how it is. But look, let's have a look at there's many photos out there, but that's the back of Donald Trump with Rupert Murdoch. They've got an interesting history, but there's no doubt that for many years, especially in Trump's first run for president, that he was bolstered and supported by Rupert Murdoch to become president. Even now, just go onto Fox News or any similar channel that are sort of right-wing or Rupert Murdoch owned. They're very sympathetic to right-wing views, right-wing politicians, and they will then attack people on the left or people that disagree with their views. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to be right or left, just anyone that doesn't fit into their worldview or suit their business interests. So this is when the idea of news being an objective, well, I would hope as objective and neutral as possible presentation of information to people filtered through a business that has certain interests starts to lose its objectivity or its neutrality. Or at the very least, at its worst, is just not even talked about at all. It's not so much the information that they present, but it's also what they leave out or that they don't talk about. And so just broadening this to a more Australian context as well, and this is where I want us to show that you can see Rupert Murdoch here, and Lachlan Murdoch previously talked about, but there's a whole bunch, and when I say a bunch, this is a small group of billionaires and multi-billionaires that own a lot of the media that we consume. And if this is your first time seeing a chart like this, in terms of, you see Channel 9 there, Channel 10, Channel 7 you can see there as well. Well, I remember I grew up with the mainstream media as a kid, and you would just watch the news and you'd be like, that's the news, that's what they present. But then you start to realize it's a lot of fear-mongering and sensationalization about, crime in the suburbs. That's a classic one. Terrorism, so many different things that a lot of the time are true and relevant, need to be spoken about. But there is such a bias towards these business interests, or again, what they don't talk about. And that's where the project just got cancelled. It was a Channel 10 show. It started as kind of almost a comedy show that was satirizing modern Australian culture, and then it sort of just became like a stop on a publicity tour for people like selling their books or things like that, and became very much almost a political show, but never really attacked the heart of the problem, like what I'm trying to do around bias and business interest. They just backed way off that. And if you look here to my good friend Gina Reinhardt, who I've talked about a lot, still owns nearly 10% of Channel 10. She was on the board and then resigned and left, but still has a big control in it. And then James Packer, who I think I've mentioned a couple of times, he was technically a former boss of mine. I worked at Crown Casino for a few years in the uni years, and James Packer and his family owned Crown. And he owns nearly 10% of Channel 10 as well. And you can see there, 9 is nearly 15% owned by a single person called Bruce Gordon. And again, you can see the Murdochs heavily ownership of News Corp Australia and Foxtel and things like that. A new photo. I know I've got my Dutton and Gina photo, but I just want to show here Gina Reinhardt, goes to Mar-a-Lago and meets Trump regularly. That's ScoMo. Now, I'm not so, in this case, with ScoMo and Trump, that's two leaders. He was prime minister at the time in this photo, so not so much a focus on him in this. But someone like Gina Rinehart, who owns 10% of a media company, being able to meet powerful leaders like this, it's easy to see why people can feel like the George Carlin line, it's a big club and you ain't in it. Is that how do these people at the end of the day represent everyday Aussies? Well, my answer is that they don't.